An old German shepherd held a trembling foster pup in a dark shelter kennel. By morning, Bishop was supposed to lose his last chance. Marcus Vale, a broken former Navy SEAL, saw the photo after midnight and could not look away. He drove through rain and snow, not knowing that saving 2 dogs would uncover something darker. The old dog was not dangerous because he wanted to hurt anyone. He was feared because he had once refused to bite the innocent. Stay with this story, share where you're watching from, and please like and subscribe to help us reach 5,000 subscribers. Marcus Vale lived at the edge of Bend, Oregon, where the town thinned into pine, cold pasture, and long stretches of road that seemed to go nowhere on purpose. His house sat low against the wind, a small timber place with a tin-roofed workshop beside it and a view of fields that turned silver whenever frost came down. In summer, dust moved over those fields like tired smoke. In winter, the grass hardened, the fence wires sang, and the ponderosa pines stood around the property like old sentries who had forgotten the names of the wars they had survived. Marcus was 50 years old, broad-shouldered, and still built with the spare, hard strength of a man who had once been shaped by command. His hair, dark brown with silver at the temples, was kept in a neat undercut. His face was clean-shaven, angular, and weathered by wind, rather than age alone. There was a handsome severity to him, the kind that did not ask to be noticed. His jaw looked carved rather than born. His eyes, gray-blue and watchful, carried the long-distance look of someone who had learned that danger sometimes arrived before sound did. Years earlier, Marcus had been a Navy SEAL. He did not say that often. Around Bend, people knew enough not to ask much. They knew he had served, they knew he had come back different. They knew 2 men from his team had not come back at all after an ambush in a place most folks in town could not pronounce. They did not know that Marcus still remembered the metallic crack of a vehicle door twisting under impact. They did not know that the sound of a dropped wrench could throw his whole body into a silence so deep it looked like calm from the outside. That was the trouble with some wounds. They had the manners to stay invisible until a bad sound opened them. At night, Marcus often slept on the floor beside his bed instead of in it. The mattress felt too soft, too exposed, too high. The floorboards, cold beneath his back, gave him the sense that the world had a bottom, and he had found it. From there he could see the bedroom door. From there he could hear the workshop. From there he could believe for a few hours that nothing would come through the dark without him knowing. By day he fixed farm machinery. That was what he told people, because it was true, and because it ended conversations quickly. Tractors, irrigation engines, hay balers, old pumps that coughed up mud and rust. Machines came to him with their belts split, their filters clogged, their bolts frozen in place. Marcus listened to them the way some men listened to confession. He knew when an engine was lying. He knew when a part could be saved and when it had already surrendered. Farmers liked him because he charged fairly and did not waste words. If a job cost less than expected, he said so. If a machine was dead, he said that too. He did not drink on the job. He did not leave tools scattered. He wrote notes in block letters on yellow pads and taped them to repaired engines. Most of his customers respected him with the quiet caution people reserve for a large dog behind a fence, admiration mixed with the understanding that sudden movements were unwise. One elderly neighbor, Mrs. Harlan, sometimes left things on his porch: a loaf of sourdough wrapped in a blue towel, a pumpkin in October. Once, a jar of blackberry jam with a note that said, "Made too much again," which was a lie so gentle Marcus never corrected it. She never knocked. She simply left her offerings and went home, like a villager placing bread at the threshold of a lonely old god. Marcus always returned the towel washed and folded. He never knew what else to do with kindness. On the night the photograph found him, rain moved across the roof in thin, cold fingers. It was late, nearly 2 in the morning, though sleep had not been anywhere near Marcus for hours. He had tried the bed first, then the floor, then the kitchen chair. Finally, he sat at the small table in his work pants and thermal shirt, one hand wrapped around a mug of coffee, gone bitter and cold. His phone lay face down beside a stack of invoices. He did not like scrolling. The endless parade of noise, outrage, jokes, grief, and recipes felt like a town square where everyone had forgotten how to lower their voice. But some nights, the little glowing screen was easier than the dark corners of the room. He turned it over. The post appeared halfway down the feed, shared by someone from a regional animal rescue page. At first, Marcus almost moved past it. Then he stopped. The photograph was not sharp. It had been taken through kennel bars under weak yellow light. The concrete floor looked damp. A metal bowl sat untouched in the corner. Along the back wall, shadows gathered thickly, as though the dark itself had been kennelled there. In the center lay an old German shepherd. His coat was black and tan, though age had softened the colors. His muzzle was silver white, the fur around his eyes dusted gray, and one ear seemed to fold slightly at the tip. He was not lying in comfort. He was braced, forelegs curved around a smaller dog tucked against his chest. The puppy was a shepherd mix, 5 or 6 months old perhaps, all long legs, soft ears, and frightened eyes. One ear stood up. The other leaned sideways, as if it had lost confidence halfway to courage. His tan coat had a dark smudge along the back, like ash rubbed into gold. The caption said their names were Bishop and Ash. Bishop, the old one, had taken the pup under his care inside the shelter. Staff had tried to move Ash to a separate kennel because space was tight. Bishop had placed himself between the pup and the door, not lunging, not biting, simply refusing to let the little one be taken. No one had been hurt. But the shelter was over capacity, and Bishop's file had been changed from senior hold to behavioral risk. A staff member named Elena Price had written the post, "Please, he is not a bad dog. He is scared and protecting the puppy. We need an emergency foster before morning. They do not have to stay together forever, but tonight they believe they do. Bishop's time is scheduled for tomorrow. I am begging someone to see him before it is too late." Marcus read it once, then again. The house seemed to grow quieter around him. Rain ticked against the window over the sink. Somewhere in the workshop, a chain shifted in the wind and gave a faint metallic clink. Marcus flinched before he could stop himself, fingers tightening around the phone. He hated that. The body's betrayal. The old command post still operating in the bones after the war had packed up and left everyone else alone. He looked back at the photograph. Bishop's eyes did not beg. That was what held Marcus there. Not desperation. Not sweetness. Not the easy sorrow that made people click and cry and move on. Bishop looked tired, yes, he looked old, but there was a line in him that had not broken. The old dog had placed himself around the puppy like a wall built from breath and bone. Marcus had seen that shape before. A man bent over another man in a ditch while the night opened its iron mouth around them. A shoulder shoved against a door that would not hold. A hand reaching back when every sensible thing in the world screamed to keep moving. He set the phone down, then picked it up again. The puppy's name was Ash. A strange little name for a creature still soft with life. Ash tucked beneath Bishop's chest as if the old dog were guarding the last coal in a ruined fire. Marcus stared until the screen dimmed. When it went dark, he saw his own face reflected there. Clean-shaven, hollow-eyed, older than he felt, and younger than the dead. He stood so suddenly the chair scraped the floor. The sound cut through the kitchen. Marcus froze, breath caught, every muscle waiting for a second sound. None came, only rain, only the refrigerator hum, only the old clock above the stove clicking along with the nerve of a foolish little machine that believed time was simple. Marcus exhaled. "Damn chair," he muttered. It was not funny, but the muttering helped. It put a name on the sound. Chair, kitchen, Oregon. Now. He went to the bedroom, pulled pulled on his olive-drab combat shirt with the camouflage sleeves and the worn horizontal bands at the upper arms. The fabric was old, softened by years of washing, frayed a little at the cuffs. Over it, he put his dark canvas jacket. He laced his brown work boots, took his truck keys from the hook, and paused by the door. The sensible part of him had many objections. He was not approved as a foster. He had not owned a dog in years. He slept on the floor. He sometimes lost whole minutes to sounds other men forgot instantly. There were younger people, warmer families, brighter homes. Someone else would surely answer the post. But the photograph had already asked the only question that mattered. What if no one did? Marcus locked the door behind him and stepped into the rain. The drive to Redmond was not long by daylight, but that night it felt like crossing a country made entirely of weather. Rain mixed with thin snow as he headed north. His headlights swept over fence posts, empty fields, and the occasional reflective eyes of deer standing at the edge of the road like witnesses. The truck heater coughed before giving him warmth. The windshield wipers dragged the world aside and lost it again. He kept both hands on the wheel. Once a semi passed in the opposite lane, its chains rattling. The sound struck hard and bright. Marcus felt the old pull under his ribs, the downward yank into memory. He forced his thumb against the scratched face of his military watch. 1, 2, 3, steering wheel, highway, snow. Coffee? Oregon. The truck steadied. So did his breathing. "Not tonight," he said, though no one was there to hear him. By the time he reached the shelter, the eastern sky was still dark, but loosening at the edges. The building sat behind a chain-link fence, low and tired, with a flickering security light over the side entrance. A mural of smiling animals had been painted on the front wall, but rain streaks had dragged the colors downward until the dogs and cats seemed to be crying politely. A woman opened the rear door before Marcus could knock. She was in her 30s, small and quick-moving, with brown hair tied low and a hoodie under a shelter vest. Her eyes were red-rimmed, not from softness, but from a night spent fighting exhaustion and losing. Stray dog hair clung to her sleeves. She held a clipboard against her chest, like a shield. "Marcus Vale?" she asked. He nodded. "Elena Price?" "Yes." She looked him over, not rudely, but carefully. His size, his military shirt, his stillness. "Thank you for coming." "Don't thank me yet." A tired smile touched her mouth and vanished. "Fair." Inside, the shelter smelled of disinfectant, damp blankets, kibble, and fear. Dogs stirred as they passed. Some barked. Some pressed noses through wire. Others only watched, saving their hope like water in a drought. Elena spoke quietly while walking him down the corridor. "I need to be clear. This is emergency foster only. 72 hours. After that, paperwork, home check, medical review, management approval. Bishop is old. His hips are bad. He has guarding behavior around the puppy, though I swear to you he has not hurt anyone." Marcus listened. "Ash is young," Elena continued. "Too young to understand any of this. Bishop decided the pup belonged to him. We tried to separate them because we had to clean and rearrange space. He planted himself in front of Ash and wouldn't move. New staff panicked. The report made him sound worse than he is. They stopped before the last kennel. The old German shepherd was standing. Bishop had risen before they arrived, as if he had felt them coming through the concrete. His body blocked the puppy completely, except for one tan paw, visible beneath his chest. The silver muzzle pointed toward Marcus. The folded tip of one ear gave him a battered dignity, like a knight whose helmet had been dented in some ancient, foolish tournament. Elena started to say something, but Marcus lifted one hand slightly. "Let me sit." He lowered himself outside the kennel bars, not close, not reaching, just down, slow and heavy, until his palm rested flat on the cold concrete. Bishop watched him, Marcus did not stare directly into the dog's eyes for long. He looked at the floor, the water bowl, the frayed blanket, the small paw beneath Bishop's chest. He let his breathing slow. In the corridor behind him, a terrier barked twice and then quieted. Somewhere, metal clanged. Marcus felt it, but Bishop felt it too. The dog's shoulders tightened. Marcus kept his hand on the floor. "Yeah," he murmured, so softly Elena barely heard. "I don't like that sound either." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the puppy moved. Ash's narrow face appeared under Bishop's chest. One ear up, one ear leaning. Bright amber eyes peered at Marcus with the tragic seriousness only a puppy can manage, as if the whole universe had placed a tax bill in his water bowl. Despite himself, Marcus's mouth twitched. "Rough morning, huh?" Ash blinked. Bishop did not move aside, but his head lowered by an inch. Then another. His silver muzzle dipped, not in surrender, but in consideration. He seemed to measure Marcus not by his size, not by his clothes, not by the old war stitched into his posture, but by the quiet space he was willing to leave. At last, Bishop lay down again, still curved around Ash, but no longer standing against Marcus. Elena released a breath she had been holding. Marcus stayed where he was. The first pale line of dawn touched the high windows. By the time the paperwork lay on the counter, Marcus's signature looked rougher than usual. Elena explained each form. Foster responsibility, medical follow-up, no transfer without shelter approval, mandatory check-in, review after 72 hours. She did not pretend the system was simple, and Marcus respected her for that. "There's one more thing," Elena said. "Taking both may make approval harder. Some people will argue they should be separated. A puppy is easier to place. Bishop is old," Marcus said. "Yes." "Complicated." "Yes." Marcus looked through the small office window toward the kennel hall. Bishop had not taken his eyes off Ash. Elena's voice softened. "You don't have to promise forever at 4 in the morning." Marcus picked up the pen again. "I'm not promising forever." He signed the last line. "I'm promising I won't separate them today." Elena looked down at the forms for a second too long. When she raised her face, her eyes shone, but she did not cry. Perhaps shelter workers learned to save tears for the drive home. A few minutes later, Bishop stepped out of the kennel with Ash pressed against his side. The old dog moved stiffly, hips slow, head high. Ash stumbled once over the threshold, recovered with great dignity, then immediately bumped into Marcus's boot. Marcus did not reach for them. He simply opened the rear door to the gray morning and let the cold air come in. Outside, dawn was spreading over Redmond, thin and silver. The rain had softened to mist. Somewhere beyond the fence, a truck rolled past on the road, and the world went on in its usual careless way. But inside the shelter, in the narrow space between a dark kennel and an uncertain day, Marcus Vale stood beside an old German shepherd and a trembling pup. He looked at Elena. "I'm not separating them." His voice was not loud. It did not rise like a vow in a movie or thunder like a speech before battle. It was quiet, almost plain. Yet in that tired hallway, with dawn touching the windows and Bishop's silver muzzle lowered over Ash, the words sounded like a door opening before the sun. The first thing Marcus noticed was the noise. Not loud noise, not the kind that split the air and sent his body back to places he did not name. This was smaller, stranger, almost embarrassing in its gentleness. Bishop's nails clicked slowly across the kitchen tile. Ash's paws skidded on the old rug by the stove. A stainless steel water bowl touched the floor with a soft ring when Marcus set it down, and the puppy jumped as if the bowl had challenged him to a duel. Marcus stood in the middle of his kitchen, holding an unopened bag of senior dog food in one hand and puppy kibble in the other, and realized his house no longer sounded like a place waiting to be abandoned. For years the cabin had breathed only with him. Short breaths, careful breaths, coffee cooling in mugs, oil on work shirts, the refrigerator humming at night, wind worrying the pine branches outside the bedroom window. The house had been orderly, but not alive. A man could keep a place clean and still let it become a cave. Now Bishop stood near the front door, old head lowered, silver muzzle pointed toward the room, body angled so that nothing could enter without passing him first. He had chosen the position within 5 minutes of arrival. Marcus had not told him where to go. Bishop had simply walked the perimeter once, sniffed the corners, paused at each door, inspected the low windows, and settled at the entrance like a retired guard who had accepted a new post without being asked. Ash had no such dignity. The puppy moved through the kitchen as if every object had been placed there for his personal confusion. He sniffed Marcus's boots, sneezed, backed into a chair leg, startled himself, then recovered by biting the corner of a faded red shop rag hanging from Marcus's back pocket. "Hey," Marcus said. Ash pulled. Marcus looked down at the puppy, who braced all 4 paws on the floor with heroic seriousness. One ear stood tall. The other leaned sideways like it had given up on military discipline. "That's not issued to you." Ash pulled harder. The rag slipped free. Ash trotted away with his prize, tripped over it, rolled halfway onto his side, and stared at the cloth as if it had betrayed him. A sound came out of Marcus before he could stop it. A laugh, not a full one, nothing grand, more like a rusty hinge discovering it could still move. But it was enough. Bishop lifted his head. The old shepherd's dark eyes fixed on Marcus with such solemn surprise that Marcus almost apologized. "Don't start," Marcus told him. "He attacked government property." Ash, unaware of any legal consequences, dragged the rag beneath the kitchen table and began chewing the cleanest corner. Marcus turned away to hide the small, foolish warmth rising in his chest. He had expected difficulty, mess, smell, maybe regret. He had prepared for the practical things, separate food, medication notes from the shelter, a cheap orthopedic pad he had bought years ago for a farm dog that never ended up staying overnight. He had not prepared for how quickly a little disorder could make the room less haunted. He fed them at 7. Not because anyone had told him 7 was the right time, but because Marcus understood schedules. Schedules were fences built out of minutes. They kept the day from running wild. Bishop waited until Ash's bowl was down, waited until the puppy had shoved his nose into the kibble, and only then lowered his own head. Marcus noticed. "You always do that?" he asked. Bishop did not answer. He ate with the slow care of a dog who had learned not to trust abundance. After breakfast, Marcus spread a thick folded blanket near the front door. Bishop sniffed it, then looked at the door, then back at Marcus. "Best I can do for a guard tower." Bishop stepped onto the blanket with his front paws, circled once, and lay down. His hips lowered stiffly. Marcus watched the small hesitation in the dog's back legs and made a note in his head. Softer padding, maybe heat-safe warming mat. Ask the vet before buying anything stupid. Ash finished eating and immediately tried to climb over Bishop's shoulder as though the old dog were a hill put there for recreation. Bishop closed his eyes with the grim patience of a king tolerating court entertainment. Marcus washed the bowls. The house took on a new rhythm by noon. Every small task had another creature attached to it. When Marcus walked to the workshop, Bishop rose, then stopped at the threshold when Marcus held up a hand. "Not today," he said. "Too many sharp things." Bishop stood there, displeased but obedient in the way of old soldiers and older dogs, not because they agreed, but because they understood boundaries. Ash attempted to follow anyway and bumped into Bishop's chest. The old shepherd blocked him without looking down. "Good," Marcus said. The word came out awkwardly. Praise had always felt to Marcus like a tool he had never been trained to use. Too much of it sounded false. Too little left the world colder than it needed to be. Bishop glanced at him. Marcus tried again, quieter. "Good boy." Bishop's ears shifted. Not quite trust. Not yet, but the word landed somewhere. Outside, Bend lay under a cold gray morning. Thin ice held in the shadows beside the fence posts. The fields beyond Marcus's property were pale and still, broken only by tufts of dry grass and the black lines of irrigation pipe. A raven walked along the workshop roof with the pomp of a mayor inspecting public works. Inside the workshop, Marcus worked on a tractor carburetor for a rancher named Voss. He kept the side door open so he could see the kitchen window. Every few minutes, Ash's head appeared there, then vanished. Once the puppy's paws slid up on the sill, and his mismatched ears framed his face like a badly folded warning sign. Marcus pointed a wrench at him through the glass. "Don't eat anything structural." Ash disappeared. Bishop remained near the front door. By late afternoon, Marcus had installed 2 low amber lights in the living room and hallway. Bright overhead bulbs made shadows jump. Low light softened the corners. He moved a loose metal bucket from the back porch into the shed because the wind kept nudging it against the siding. He taped a small note near the door. "Check latch." Then, after looking at it, added another below. "Dogs." The plural looked strange. He stood there longer than he meant to. Dogs. A house could change with one word. His phone rang just after sunset. Marcus looked at the screen. Elena Price. He answered on the second ring. "Vale?" "Hi, Marcus, it's Elena. Just checking in." Her voice sounded tired, but less desperate than it had in the shelter hallway. Behind her, dogs barked in uneven bursts. "How are they?" Marcus looked toward the living room. Ash was asleep on his back with all 4 paws in the air, the red shop rag under his chin like a captured flag. Bishop lay between the puppy and the front door, eyes half open. "They're breathing," Marcus said. Elena paused. "That is technically an update." "He ate. She—" Marcus stopped. Ash is a he, right?" "Yes, though he has the survival instincts of a damp sock." Marcus looked at the puppy. "That tracks." Elena laughed softly, then lowered her voice. "Bishop?" "Watching the door." "He did that here, too." A pause. Paper rustled on her end. "Marcus, I need to tell you something before it becomes a bigger problem." He straightened slightly. "A man named Roy Delk has been calling. He's a donor. More than a donor, really. He's helped us with repairs, food deliveries, overflow placements. Management likes him." Marcus said nothing. "He wants Bishop transferred to him, not Ash." "Just Bishop. He says he has experience with senior dogs and difficult behavior cases. He also said—" Elena stopped, anger tightening the silence. "He said you might not be a stable placement." Marcus's eyes moved to the darkening window. His reflection looked back at him from the glass. "How would he know anything about me?" "I'm trying to find that out." "Elena." "I know," she exhaled. "I think Gail may have told him more than she should have." "Gail?" "Gail Mercer, our administrative manager. She handles foster paperwork, donor coordination, transfer records. She's not malicious. She's exhausted. The shelter is drowning, and Roy has made himself very useful. Useful people can still be dangerous." "I know that, too." Marcus listened to the shelter noise behind her. Barking, a cartwheel, squeaking, someone calling for clean towels. It was not a villain's castle. It was an overworked building full of tired people and too many animals. That made the problem worse, not better. "What did Gail tell him?" Marcus asked. "That you're a former service member, that you live alone, that your foster notes say quiet handling preferred. Maybe more. I'm sorry." Marcus said nothing for a long moment. Ash snored, a small, absurd sound, like a toy engine trying to start. Bishop opened one eye, watching Marcus now instead of the door. Elena spoke again, softer. Roy is framing this as concern. He says Bishop needs a specialized environment. He says separating him from Ash would help the puppy bond elsewhere. Bishop's head lifted fully at the sound of his name, though he could not know the words. Or perhaps he knew enough. Dogs had their own scriptures, written in tone, breath, and the weight of silence. Marcus looked at the old shepherd, then at the puppy tucked behind him. No? I thought you'd say that. I'm not separating them. I know, but be careful. Until the 72-hour foster review clears, he may keep pressing. Marcus walked to the front window and looked out at the yard. Pine branches shifted in the wind. His truck sat dark beside the workshop. The porch light made a small gold island on the steps. What kind of truck does he drive? Elena hesitated. Black pickup, newer model. I don't know the plate. Why? No reason. That was not true, but it was all he had. After the call, Marcus did not move for several minutes. He stood in the living room with the phone in his hand, feeling the old machinery inside him begin to turn. Threat assessment, entry points, weak latches, blind corners, names, vehicles, motives. Then Ash woke, stretched too dramatically for a creature who had done nothing all day, and wandered over to bite Marcus's bootlace. The machinery stopped. Marcus looked down. You have terrible timing. Ash wagged his tail. Bishop watched from the blanket. For the first time in years, Marcus understood that being needed did not always arrive like a command. Sometimes it arrived as a puppy chewing your boot while an old dog judged the quality of your soul from a hallway rug. The appointment with Dr. Celia Morrow was set for the next morning. Her clinic sat on the edge of Redmond, in a squat brick building with a blue awning and wind-bent junipers along the parking lot. The sign read, Morrow Veterinary Care, in practical white letters. No cartoon paw prints, no cheerful slogans. Marcus approved of that. Inside, the waiting room was quiet except for a calico cat glaring from a carrier and an elderly man whispering apologies to a limping spaniel. Bishop entered first, stiff-legged but composed. Ash pressed close to his side, trying to look brave and succeeding only in looking like a small sheriff who had misplaced his hat. Celia Morrow came out herself. She was in her late 40s, with dark hair streaked silver and clipped back carelessly, as if vanity had lost an argument with usefulness years ago. Her scrub top was teal, her sleeves pushed to the elbow, and a black stethoscope with a strip of blue tape around the tubing hung from her neck. She did not rush toward the dogs. She stopped several feet away, turned slightly sideways, and let Bishop look at her. "That's Bishop," she said. Marcus nodded. "And that must be Ash." Ash sneezed. Celia's mouth twitched. Strong opening statement. She led them into an exam room through a side door to avoid the busier hallway. Marcus noticed that. So did Bishop. The old shepherd entered reluctantly, then swept the room with his eyes. Door, counter, window, Marcus, Ash, Celia. Only after that did he allow Ash to sit. Celia did not comment right away. She lowered herself onto a rolling stool, still angled sideways, and offered the back of her hand at Bishop's level. "No hurry," she said. Bishop sniffed once, then again. He did not soften, but he did not retreat. Celia examined Ash first. "Puppy before guardian," she murmured. "Usually reduces the insult." Ash endured the exam with great tragedy, especially when Celia looked in his ears. Marcus held the leash, careful not to crowd. Bishop watched every movement, body tight but controlled. When Ash tried to hide under Bishop's chest, Celia paused and let him. "He's underweight," she said, "but not severely. Stress signs, nothing unexpected." Then she turned to Bishop. The old dog rose before she asked. Not because he wanted to, Marcus thought, but because he preferred meeting discomfort upright. Celia took her time. Hips, spine, teeth, eyes, heart. She touched, waited, watched his breathing, then touched again. Bishop tolerated her, though his gaze never left the door for long. Finally, Celia sat back. This dog has training. Marcus's jaw tightened. Military? Not necessarily. Maybe private protection. Maybe something pretending to be protection. Her eyes sharpened, not dramatically, but enough that Marcus felt the room change. See how he positions? He doesn't guard resources the way a typical fearful dog might. He controls space, he reads exits, he keeps the puppy inside his perimeter. He dangerous? Celia looked at Bishop. The old shepherd's silver muzzle rested above Ash's back. His body was tired. His eyes were not. All dogs can be dangerous under the wrong pressure, she said, but that isn't what stands out to me. What does? He's not trying to dominate anyone. He's managing threat. There's a difference. Marcus heard the words settle somewhere deep. Celia ran the microchip scanner along Bishop's shoulders. The device beeped. She wrote down the number, then frowned faintly at her tablet. Old registration, she said. Incomplete. I'll need to dig. Might be nothing. Marcus did not believe in nothing. Neither, by the look of her, did Celia. They left through the side entrance 20 minutes later with medication notes, feeding instructions, and a warning not to let Bishop overexert himself in cold weather. The morning had brightened, but the air remained sharp. Marcus guided Ash down from the curb while Bishop paused beside him. A black truck rolled through the parking lot. It did not stop. It did not need to. The horn sounded once, 2 high notes, 1 low. Bishop collapsed toward the ground so fast Marcus thought his legs had given out. The old shepherd's ears flattened. His body trembled from shoulders to tail. Ash squealed and scrambled beneath him, pressing into the hollow of Bishop's chest. Marcus turned. The truck passed the clinic driveway, slow enough for him to see mud across part of the license plate and a faded sticker on the rear window. High Desert Second Chance. The letters were worn, nearly polite in their decay. By the time Marcus stepped forward, the truck had turned the corner and disappeared. Behind him, Celia had come to the doorway. She saw Bishop. She saw Marcus's face. No one spoke for a moment. The wind moved over the parking lot, dragging dry leaves along the curb like little brown animals. Marcus crouched beside Bishop, not touching at first. The old dog's breathing was fast, but his eyes were open. Present, terrified, but present. "Bishop," Marcus said quietly. "Here." The dog's gaze shifted to him. "Parking lot. Clinic. Morning." Celia watched Marcus ground the dog with the same words he used for himself. Not command, not comfort exactly. A map. Ash pressed harder under Bishop's chest, shivering. Marcus looked toward the corner where the truck had vanished. In Bishop's eyes, something old had risen from its grave. And for the first time since he had brought the dogs home, Marcus understood that the dark kennel had not been the beginning of Bishop's fear. It had only been the first place someone had taken a photograph of it. Dr. Celia Morrow did not pretend the microchip would give them answers. That was one of the reasons Marcus trusted her. A lesser person might have waved the scanner over Bishop's shoulders like a magician raising a wand over a cursed relic. Celia did no such thing. She sat at the clinic counter with her tablet, the chip number written in block letters on a yellow sticky note, and the old German shepherd lying on a mat near the door with Ash tucked against his chest. "The chip tells us a number," she said. "Sometimes a name, sometimes an old owner, sometimes nothing useful at all. It doesn't tell us what a dog survived." Marcus stood beside the exam table, arms folded, jaw tight. The morning outside had grown bright, but the shadow of the black truck still seemed to sit across the parking lot. "What does it tell us?" Celia tapped the tablet. Old registration. Bishop was transferred through a private training facility about 6 years ago. Name listed as Bishop then, so at least that much stayed with him. Facility address was east of here, toward the high desert foothills. It's closed now. Closed how? Officially? Business dissolved. Unofficially? Celia looked over the top of the tablet. That's what we don't know. Bishop shifted slightly. The old dog's back leg trembled from the effort of holding one position too long, but he refused to lie fully on his side while strangers were speaking. Ash, who understood none of the words and all of the tension, placed his chin over Bishop's front paw. Marcus noticed. Celia noticed too. "Microchip won't carry a confession," she said. "If we want to know where he's been, we need vet records, transfer paperwork, old rescue contacts, maybe kennel markings if anyone photographed him. And people. Always people." Marcus did not like that. People were slow. People forgot. People lied to themselves first, then to others. Machines failed honestly. If a tractor would not start, it did not smile and promise it had the animal's best interest at heart. Waiting had its own taste for him. Metallic, dry, like fear held under the tongue. In the years after the ambush, Marcus had replayed waiting more than action. Waiting for the radio to clear. Waiting for a call sign that did not answer. Waiting for the right second to move, then spending the rest of his life wondering if the right second had been 3 seconds earlier. Now a dog's history sat behind old records, tired staff, and phone calls. Marcus looked down at Bishop. The old shepherd looked back without pleading. His silver muzzle rested above Ash, but his eyes held Marcus where he stood, as if warning him against the ancient stupidity of charging into darkness simply because darkness had insulted him. Celia reached for her phone. "I'll call 2 people, one in retired working dog care, one in rescue compliance. Elena can pull shelter intake paperwork. There's also a volunteer who may remember more. Older woman, Nadine Bell. She photographs dogs for the shelter." "The one who took the kennel picture?" "Yes." Marcus remembered the photograph. Yellow light, concrete. Bishop curled around Ash like a wall with a heartbeat. "Call her." Celia gave him a look. "I was planning to." "Right." "Command voice doesn't work on veterinarians," she said dryly. For a moment Marcus almost smiled. Noted. By late afternoon, Celia had moved the conversation from the clinic to a small back room that smelled of printer toner, dog treats, and lemon disinfectant. Elena arrived from the shelter still wearing her navy hoodie and rescue vest, hair coming loose from its tie. She carried a folder thick enough to suggest either competence or trouble. Nadine Bell came in 10 minutes later with a canvas tote bag, a digital camera hanging from her neck, and a round tin of oatmeal cookies under one arm. She was small, white-haired, and soft-looking in the way winter clouds look soft before dropping 2 feet of snow on a mountain pass. She wore a cream knit hat and a sage cardigan with dog hair stitched into it by long service. Her eyes were pale blue-gray, bright behind wire-framed glasses. "I brought cookies," she said, "because bad news travels better with oats." Elena took the tin. "Nadine, this is Marcus Vale." Nadine looked at him, not with fear, not with the quick curiosity people often gave men his size, but with a careful kindness that did not press. "You're the man who came for Bishop." Marcus nodded. "And Ash." That earned him a small approving look. Good, people forget the little one in the shadow of the dramatic old fellow. At the sound of his name, Ash lifted his head from where he lay under Bishop's chin. One ear stood up, the other slanted sideways with comic uncertainty. Nadine crouched slowly, joints complaining just enough to be honest. "Hello, sweetheart." "You look like you were assembled by committee." Ash wagged once, uncertain whether this was praise. Bishop did not rise. He watched Nadine with guarded focus. She did not reach for him. Instead, she opened her tote bag and removed a stack of printed photographs bound with rubber bands. "I started keeping copies 5 years ago," she said. "At first it was because the shelter computer kept eating files, then because dogs moved and no one remembered where. Then because I got old enough to stop believing every cheerful explanation." She laid the first photographs on the table. Dogs. Dozens of them. Some old, some young, some grinning at the camera, some frightened beneath fluorescent lights, some leaning against volunteers as if they had already decided humans were worth another try. Nadine tapped one with a thin finger. "Clover, husky mix. Transferred to a foster farm Roy recommended. No update after 2 weeks." Another. "Juno, sweet as pudding. As liked men in ball caps, which is rare enough to be a personality trait. Gone through high desert second chance." Another. "Flint, scared of brooms. Don't laugh, Mr. Vale. Brooms have ruined many reputations." Marcus had not been laughing, but the corner of his mouth shifted. Nadine continued. "Maple, then 2 shepherd pups. I called them Salt and Pepper because one had a white toe and one had the attitude of a restaurant manager. They were supposed to go to a rural rehabilitation placement. Never saw a follow-up." Elena stood very still. "I asked," Nadine said gently, without looking at her. "Everyone was busy. There were always reasons. Too many dogs. Too few kennels. A donor willing to help. And Roy always came smiling with a receipt, a bag of food, or money for repairs." The room grew quiet in a way Marcus recognized. It was the silence that followed a map being turned over and revealing that the border had been wrong all along. Celia sorted the documents with brisk hands. "These transfers connect to High Desert Second Chance?" "Some directly," Nadine said. "Some through people who always seemed to show up after Roy visited. I wrote names when I could, dates, vehicles." Marcus looked at her notebook. The handwriting was small but sharp, each date and detail pinned down like evidence in a windstorm. "You kept all of this?" Nadine's face softened. "Someone has to remember the ones no one comes back to ask about." The sentence moved through Marcus with unexpected force. He looked at Bishop. The old dog's eyes were half closed, but he was not asleep. Ash had begun to chew the corner of Marcus's red shop rag, which he had somehow stolen again from the pocket of the canvas jacket hanging on a chair. Even in the middle of a slow, unraveling darkness, the puppy had found time for petty crime. Marcus should have taken the rag back. He did not. Celia's second call came through on speaker. A retired handler from a working dog rehabilitation group recognized the name of Bishop's old training facility. It had advertised executive protection dogs and property guardians for wealthy clients across rural Oregon and Idaho. The brochures had been polished, the photos clean, the language respectable. But complaints had followed it like flies in summer. Dogs returned fearful of certain sounds. Dogs reacting to metal draglines. Dogs trained to respond to short whistle or horn patterns. Nothing that proved a major crime by itself. Enough, however, to build a shape in the fog. Then came the detail that changed Marcus's breathing. The handler remembered one report about a German shepherd removed from the program because of refusal to engage. Celia leaned closer to the phone. "Meaning?" The voice on the speaker crackled. "Meaning he wouldn't bite on command when the target was passive. The report described the dog as unreliable under pressure." But one of the assistants wrote something in the margin. "I remember because it was strange." Marcus stared at the table. "What did it say?" Celia asked. A pause. Papers rustled somewhere on the other end. It said, "Dog placed himself between decoy and handler. No strike. Maintained block." No one in the room spoke. Ash chewed the rag softly. Bishop's eyes opened. Marcus felt that old place inside him, the sealed room where memory sat in a chair and waited. The words did not break the door down. They simply opened it enough for cold air to move. Dog placed himself between decoy and handler. No strike. Maintained block. He saw, not Bishop, but men under dust-colored sky. A decision point, a command half heard. The terrible holiness of seconds. He had spent years wondering whether loyalty meant moving when told, holding when ordered, trusting the shape of a plan even as it burned around him. And here was this old dog trained by people who wanted obedience sharpened into a weapon, refusing at the one moment refusal mattered. Not because he was weak, because something in him still knew the difference between threat and fear. Marcus stepped away from the table. Elena noticed. So did Celia. Neither followed. He stood by the back window of the clinic room and looked out at the service alley, where rainwater collected in a shallow pothole and reflected a strip of pale sky. His hands wanted something to do. A wrench, a rifle, a steering wheel, anything but hang empty at his sides while a dog's old report put words to a wound he had never managed to name. Behind him, Nadine said quietly, "Some creatures fail the wrong test and pass the one that matters." Marcus closed his eyes. He did not trust wisdom when it came polished, but Nadine's sentence arrived carrying dog hair, oatmeal, and grief. That made it harder to dismiss. When he turned back, Bishop was watching him. Not pleading, not asking, just there. Marcus crossed the room and crouched beside the old shepherd. His knees cracked. Bishop did not move away. Ash, still holding the rag, pressed against Bishop's side. "You refused," Marcus said under his breath. Bishop blinked slowly. Marcus did not know whether the dog understood. It did not matter. The room did. By the time Marcus drove home with Bishop and Ash, the sky over Bend had turned a deep iron blue. Wind came down from the hills, pushing dry pine needles across the road. He kept his speed steady. He did not talk. In the passenger side rearview mirror, he watched Bishop's silver muzzle above the back seat. Ash slept curled against him, the stolen red rag trapped under one paw, like treasure taken from a fallen empire. At home, Marcus fed them, checked Bishop's medication, and added another blanket near the door. He had just set a kettle on the stove when headlights swept across the front window. Bishop rose before Marcus turned. Not fast. Not young, but completely. Ash woke, startled, and slid behind the old dog. The vehicle stopped outside the house. Marcus moved to the window, but did not stand in the light. A black truck sat in the drive, clean except for mud along the lower panels. Its engine idled with the smooth confidence of money well spent. A man stepped out carrying a large bag of premium dog food. Roy Delk looked exactly like the kind of man a tired shelter would trust. He was in his mid-50s, tall enough, neat enough, with silver-threaded dark blonde hair combed carefully to one side. He wore a quilted vest over a denim shirt, clean jeans, and brown leather gloves too fine for farm work. His face held a controlled smile, warm at the edges and cold in the center. Marcus opened the door but did not step aside. Roy lifted the bag slightly. "Mr. Vale, I hope I'm not intruding." "You are." The smile adjusted, but did not disappear. "Fair enough. I'm Roy Delk. I work with several rescue groups in the region." "I know who you are." "Then you know I'm here to help." Behind Marcus, Bishop stood half in shadow. He made no sound, but his whole body had tightened. The tremor was there again, running under the skin like a buried wire. Still, he did not retreat. He placed himself in front of Ash. Roy looked past Marcus. His gaze touched Bishop first. Briefly, measuring, then Ash. Longer. Marcus saw it. A fraction too long, a man admiring a tool he expected someday to hold. "I heard Bishop was placed with you temporarily," Roy said. "Given his age and behavioral complications, I felt it best to offer support. I have experience with difficult senior dogs." "Good for you." Roy chuckled softly, as if Marcus were amusing rather than hostile. You don't have to do this alone. In fact, with your background, it may be wiser not to. Sometimes men with heavy histories mistake rescue for redemption." The words were quiet, civil, polished smooth. Marcus felt them land exactly where Roy aimed them. For one heartbeat, the porch disappeared, and he was back under a sky full of noise, carrying the weight of names no one else in Oregon knew. Then Bishop leaned into the back of his leg. Not much. Just enough. A living weight. Present. Warm. Here. Marcus placed one hand back without looking and rested it on Bishop's head. The old shepherd still trembled, but he did not move away from the door. Ash was hidden behind him, small and silent. Roy's smile thinned. "Dogs aren't teammates, Mr. Vale?" Marcus looked at him for a long moment. The wind moved through the pines. The porch light hummed. Somewhere in the kitchen, the kettle began to whisper. "You're right," Marcus said. Roy's eyebrows lifted slightly, surprised by agreement. Marcus's hand remained on Bishop's silver head. "They didn't enlist. They don't owe anyone obedience. They just know who needs protecting." For the first time, Roy's smile failed to find its way back quickly. Marcus looked at the bag of food. "Take that with you." "It's a gift." "No?" A polite man would have left then. Roy took 3 more seconds, letting the silence stretch, perhaps hoping Marcus would fill it with anger. Marcus did not. He had learned from Bishop that not every command deserved a bite. Finally, Roy returned to his truck. The engine rolled backward down the drive, then turned toward the road. No horn sounded. When the tail lights vanished between the pines, Marcus closed the door and locked it. Bishop stayed standing for a while after Roy was gone. Marcus did not tell him to lie down. He sat on the floor beside the old dog, one shoulder against the wall, and let Ash crawl into the narrow space between them with the red rag still in his mouth. The house held 3 breaths, one young and uneven, one old and guarded, one human trying to remember that waiting was not always failure, and refusing to strike was sometimes the bravest thing left. Truth did not arrive with thunder. It arrived in coffee-stained folders, mismatched photographs, half-legible transfer forms, and the kind of silence that settled over a room when everyone realized the same terrible shape was forming from different pieces. Marcus had seen men worship speed. He had been one of them once. Speed of entry, speed of decision, speed of response. In another life, hesitation could cost breath. But this was not that life, no matter how often his body tried to drag him back to it. This fight moved through printers, phone calls, old email chains, clinic notes, and the stubborn memory of a woman who carried photographs like sacred relics. They met in the small back office of the Redmond shelter because Elena said management would ask fewer questions if they looked like they were drowning in normal paperwork. That was not difficult. The room already looked like paperwork had flooded it years ago and never fully drained. Elena Price sat on the floor with her back against a filing cabinet, rescue vest still zipped, hair falling loose around her tired face. Dr. Celia Morrow had taken the desk, not out of authority, but because she needed space for her laptop and the stack of medical notes she had printed from 3 clinics. Nadine Bell occupied a folding chair near the heater, a tin of oatmeal cookies balanced on her lap, her old camera resting beside her like a sleeping cat. Marcus stood at first. He preferred standing. Standing let him see exits, corners, shoulders, hands. It also made small rooms feel smaller. After Elena glanced up at him for the 3rd time, he pulled a chair near the door and sat down without comment. Bishop lay at his feet, angled toward the hallway. Ash sprawled against Bishop's ribs, chewing on the end of Marcus's red shop rag with the busy devotion of a monk illuminating scripture. Nobody in the room looked like a detective. Marcus was a former SEAL turned mechanic, wearing an olive combat shirt under a canvas jacket that smelled faintly of oil. Elena looked like she had not slept properly since winter began. Celia had the sharp calm of a veterinarian who could read fear in a dog's spine before a human opened his mouth. Nadine looked like someone's grandmother until she opened her notebook and began naming dates with the precision of a court stenographer. Celia placed a map on the desk. High Desert Second Chance is the common name, but not every transfer goes directly there. Elena pushed a folder toward Marcus. Some went through private fosters first, some through rural rehabilitation placements, a few through people Roy recommended. Names? Marcus asked. Elena gave him a look that said she knew exactly how much he wanted something he could hold in his hand. Names, phone numbers, addresses, some of them real, some not. Nadine adjusted her glasses and began laying out photographs in rows. Clover, a husky mix with one blue eye and one brown. Juno, a blocky-headed dog with a white chest and the softest grin Marcus had ever seen in a shelter photo. Flint, dark, nervous, ears low. Maple, long-legged freckled nose, leaning against a volunteer's knee. 2 shepherd pups Nadine had called Salt and Pepper because no one had given them proper names before they were transferred. Each photo came with a date. Each date came with a form. Each form came with a destination that sounded kind on paper. Rural foster acreage, behavioral reset placement, open run rehabilitation, second chance farm environment. Pretty phrases. Marcus hated them immediately. They were the kind of phrases that dressed a locked door in flowers. Did anyone follow up? He asked. Elena's jaw tightened. We tried. Sometimes we got one update, sometimes a photo that could have been taken the same day as pickup, sometimes nothing. We were told the foster families valued privacy. Privacy, Marcus repeated. Nadine tapped the edge of one photo. Privacy is what people say when they don't want you looking through the window. The heater clicked. Ash startled, then settled when Bishop lowered his muzzle over the pup's shoulder. Celia turned her laptop so they could see the spreadsheet she had started. I reached out to clinics within 100 miles. Carefully, no accusations, just asking about dogs with transfer histories connected to these names. What came back? Marcus asked. Patterns? That word sat down in the room like a fifth adult. Celia pointed to a column. Several dogs showed similar stress responses. Fear of a specific horn pattern, strong reaction to metal drag sounds, avoidance of pine oil disinfectant, sensitivity to short command words given in a clipped tone. Elena looked pale. Roy's truck horn. Maybe, Celia said. We don't assume yet. We note. Marcus respected that too. Celia did not let anger outrun fact. She put a leash on it and made it heal. Nadine opened another folder. And then there are the addresses. She had printed them from old transfer forms and clipped each one to a photo. One led to a mailbox store outside Prinville, another to a storage unit, another to a farm parcel with no active residents. One phone number had been disconnected. Another rang through to a voicemail greeting with no name. On paper, Mercy had a dozen locations. On the ground, it had vanished. The office door opened before anyone knocked. Gail Mercer stood there with a ring of keys at her belt and a face drawn tight by too many years under fluorescent lights. She wore a navy shelter polo beneath a gray fleece, her name tag catching the room's hard light. Her hair, cut in a short blonde-gray bob, looked neat in the way exhausted people sometimes become neat, because one more loose thing might undo them. "What is this?" she asked. Elena rose. "Gail?" "I asked what this is." Nadine's hands stilled over the photographs. Gail looked at Marcus first, then Bishop, then the rows of dog photos on the floor. Her expression hardened, not with cruelty, but with defense. Marcus had seen that look on men who were not ready to admit the bridge behind them was burning. "We're reviewing transfers connected to High Desert Second Chance," Elena said. Gail's mouth thinned. Without notifying me? We tried to ask questions before. You tried to imply that I've been handing dogs to a criminal. No, Elena said. Her voice shook once, then steadied. I'm saying we may have trusted the wrong man. Gail gave a short laugh with no humor in it. The wrong man? Roy paid to fix Kennel 6 when the roof leaked in January. He bought 3 months of senior food when our grant fell through. He took overflow dogs when we were sleeping in shifts because there wasn't enough space to walk between crates. Do you remember that? Or are we only remembering what makes a better story? Marcus did not speak. This was not his room yet. Not his wound to touch first. Elena's eyes filled, but she did not look away. I remember. I also remember Clover. Gail flinched. Nadine slowly lifted Clover's photograph and placed it on the desk between them. Then Juno, then Flint, then Maple, then the 2 shepherd pups, Salt and Pepper, nameless in the official forms, but not nameless to Nadine. No one accused Gail for a moment. That was worse. The photographs did what raised voices could not. They looked up from the desk with their bright, trusting eyes, an entire small jury printed on glossy paper. Gail stared down at them. The keys at her belt gave a faint metallic jingle as her hand moved, then stopped. Bishop's ears twitched. Marcus's spine tightened at the sound, but he kept still. His palm found Bishop's shoulder. The old dog did not rise. He simply leaned against Marcus's boot, a quiet weight holding both of them in the room. Gail saw the movement. Something in her face shifted. I didn't know, she said, but the sentence sounded weak even to her. Nadine's voice was gentle. Most harm likes it that way. Gail sat down as if her legs had become suddenly unreliable. For the first time since she entered, she looked old. Roy always had paperwork, she whispered. Always, cleaner than most adopters, references, donation receipts, photos sometimes. He knew the language, enrichment, rural decompression, behavior reset. He said the words we needed to hear. Elena sat beside her on the edge of the chair. Did you give him Marcus's foster details? Gail closed her eyes. Marcus waited. Yes, Gail said. Not his whole file. I told him Bishop was with a former service member, that the home needed quiet handling, that you lived outside Bend. She opened her eyes and looked at Marcus. I thought he was going to offer support. Marcus could have made her smaller with one sentence. He had the sentence ready. Instead, Bishop shifted at his feet, old bones settling, ash tucked into the shelter of his chest. Marcus looked at the 2 dogs and let the sentence die before it became another sharp thing in the world. Don't do it again, he said. Gail nodded. Her mouth trembled once. I won't. Celia slid a blank sheet of paper toward her. Then help us now. Every transfer connected to Roy, every donor note, every alternate contact, every time he asked for a specific dog. Gail looked at the sheet as if it were heavier than stone. Then she picked up a pen. The list grew. Not dramatically. Not like a confession in a dark church. It grew in ordinary handwriting under ordinary light. Names, dates, vehicle descriptions. Notes Gail remembered because she had seen them too often and questioned them too little. Roy Delk did not always sign his own name. Sometimes it was High Desert Second Chance. Sometimes a woman named Marie Voss. Sometimes a man listed only as T. Larkin. Sometimes a farm placement with an address that Celia found on satellite view and quietly turned the laptop away from Nadine before the older woman could see it was just bare land and a collapsed shed. By early evening, Marcus took the folder to Deputy Warren Pike. Pike worked out of a small county substation that smelled of coffee, wet wool, and printer dust. He was 52, thick through the shoulders, with a brown and gray mustache and the steady eyes of a man who had spent years deciding whether people were scared, lying, or both. His uniform jacket hung over the back of his chair. A mug on his desk read, world's okayest deputy. Marcus had fixed the transmission on Pike's patrol vehicle the previous spring. Pike still claimed the truck obeyed Marcus better than it obeyed the county. Now he listened without joking. Marcus laid out the documents in order: transfer patterns, missing follow-ups, false or empty addresses, screenshots of Roy's messages to Elena, notes about Bishop's reaction to the horn, Celia's summary of shared stress responses, Gail's added contacts, Nadine's photo log. Pike did not interrupt for a long time. When he finally leaned back, the chair creaked under him. "Marcus." That tone had weight, not dismissal, caution. "I know," Marcus said. "Do you?" "I know a dog reacting to a horn isn't enough." "It isn't." "I know missing updates aren't always crimes." "They aren't?" "I know you can't kick doors because a retired mechanic brought you a sad folder." Pike looked at him over the top of the file. "You practicing my job for me?" "No, trying not to make it harder." That earned him a small nod. Pike opened the folder again and tapped Gail's list. "But this is enough for a preliminary report, maybe more if animal control has related complaints. I can call the county team. Quietly." Marcus's shoulders eased a fraction. "Quietly matters," Pike added. "If this Roy Delk is just a pushy donor, we proceed clean. If he's worse, we don't spook him before we know where the dogs are." Marcus hated the sense in that. Pike saw it. "You want to move fast." "Yes." "Don't." Marcus looked toward the window. Outside, the last light had gone flat and blue over the parking lot. Pike's voice softened, but not much. "You're not overseas, Marcus. This isn't a target package. These are local agencies, warrants, animal control, records. You run ahead of that, and you might lose the only chance those dogs have." The words struck harder because they were true. Marcus gathered the folder. "Call me if you hear anything." "I will, and Marcus?" He stopped at the door. "Keep your gates locked, not because I'm telling you to panic." "I don't panic." Pike's mustache twitched. "Everyone panics. Some people just do it with better posture." For a moment, Marcus almost laughed. Then he nodded and left. Back home, the workshop light glowed warm against the dusk. Marcus fed Bishop and Ash, checked the front latch, the back latch, the side gate, then checked them again. He did not like the rhythm his mind wanted to take. Too close to old patrol routes, too close to living as if every shadow had orders. Ash interrupted by carrying one of Marcus's work gloves under the table. "Drop it," Marcus said. Ash stared at him, then slowly placed one paw over the glove as if claiming legal protection. Bishop watched from his blanket near the door, unimpressed with both parties. Marcus sighed. "You two are bad for discipline." Ash wagged. Later, when the house had settled and the amber light softened the corners, Marcus opened one more copy Gail had slipped into the folder. It was a pending transfer sheet, never finalized. The dog listed at the top was Ash, not Bishop. Ash. The date was from before the kennel photograph, before Marcus arrived, before Bishop had wrapped his old body around the puppy and refused to let staff separate them. Marcus read the line again. "Pending transfer. Ash. High Desert Second Chance Contact Review." His grip tightened until the paper bent. Across the room, Ash slept with his chin on Bishop's paw. The pup's body was growing longer every day, still awkward, still trusting the world far more than the world deserved. Bishop lifted his head as if feeling Marcus's change in the air. Outside the workshop, wind moved through the pines and pushed a hanging sheet of scrap metal against the wall. It gave one low, hollow knock. Marcus went still. Bishop's eyes stayed on him. One breath, two. Workshop, house, dogs, Oregon. Marcus crossed the room and took the scrap metal down before the wind could strike it again. Then he stood in the workshop doorway, looking back into the living room. Bishop lay beside Ash under the yellow lamp. The old shepherd's eyes shone like two coals beneath Ash, banked but not out. Marcus wanted to move, to hunt, to turn fear into action, because action had always felt cleaner than helplessness. But Bishop did not need him to become a weapon. Ash did not need a war. They needed a shelter strong enough to last the night, a man who could hold his ground without biting, a door that stayed closed, a hand steady enough to wait, even when waiting tasted like bloodless thunder. Marcus turned the lock. Then he sat on the floor beside Bishop and Ash, back against the wall, not because he had fallen into the old habit of hiding low, but because this time he chose to be near them. The house breathed 3 times in the dark, and for the first time Marcus understood that protection was not always a charge into danger. Sometimes it was becoming the place danger could not enter. By late afternoon the storm had already begun gathering itself over Bend. Marcus saw it from the workshop doorway, black clouds shouldering over the mountains, like old warships returning from a sea no one had asked them to cross. The air had gone wrong in the way animals understood before men did. Too still at first, too heavy. The pine needles held their breath. The fence wire gave no song. Even the fields beyond the house seemed to flatten themselves beneath the darkening sky. Bishop noticed before Ash did. The old German shepherd stood at the threshold of the kitchen, silver muzzle lifted, nostrils moving. His left ear, the one with the folded tip, twitched toward the west. He did not bark. Bishop rarely wasted sound, but his body had tightened, all those old instincts waking under the worn coat and aching hips. Ash, on the other hand, had stolen Marcus's red shop rag again, and was attempting to drag it beneath the couch like a tiny outlaw hiding contraband from a sheriff. Marcus watched the pup back himself into the table leg, recover with dignity, and continue the crime. "Storm's coming," Marcus said. Ash sneezed into the rag. Bishop looked at Marcus as if to say that some members of the household were not prepared for command responsibility. Marcus began checking the house before the first rain fell. It was not panic. He told himself that. It was procedure: front lock, back lock, side door, workshop latch, gate hinge, porch light, flashlight on the kitchen counter, Bishop's medication by the sink, leashes hanging where he could reach them. He filled both water bowls and set out blankets in the living room. The low amber lights came on one by one, not bright enough to turn the windows into mirrors, not dim enough to let the corners grow teeth. He dragged Bishop's thick pad closer to the inner wall, away from the front door, but still in sight of it. Bishop watched this adjustment with grave suspicion. "You can still see the entrance," Marcus told him. "Don't file a complaint." Ash pounced on the corner of the pad. Bishop gave him one long look. The puppy withdrew, carrying the expression of a prince unjustly exiled. Marcus turned on the old radio in the kitchen. A country station came through with static beneath the fiddle, an old song about roads, rain, and a woman named Mary Lou who had apparently caused a great deal of trouble in 1978. Marcus did not like loud music, but he liked silence less when weather was moving in. Silence gave his mind too much room to build bad architecture. By dusk, rain struck the roof in hard, slanted lines. The fields disappeared. The pines became black shapes bending under the wind. Every now and then, lightning opened the sky behind them, and for one white instant the trees looked like ribs around the house. Marcus made coffee he did not need. He checked the back latch again and tightened it with a screwdriver. The wood around the old frame had swollen from years of weather. He made a note to replace it fully in the morning, then stopped with the pencil in his hand. Morning. That word had become a small act of faith. In the living room, Bishop lay with Ash tucked against his side. The old dog had not eaten much dinner. His eyes kept returning to the windows. Ash tried to sleep, but every rumble of thunder made his paws twitch. When a gust pushed against the house, the pup lifted his head and pressed closer to Bishop's chest. Marcus sat in the armchair with his boots still on. He could have gone to bed. He did not. The storm had weight now. It moved over the roof, pressed at the glass, shoved wet branches along the siding. The workshop gave little groans as wind found its seams. Somewhere outside, a loose piece of tin lifted and settled, lifted and settled. Marcus heard each sound before it became a sound. That was how it worked with him. The body waited ahead of the world, already braced for the blow. People called it being alert when they admired it. They called it damaged when they did not. Marcus had never found much use for either word. He looked at Bishop. The old dog was watching him. Not the windows, not the door. Marcus. "Don't start," Marcus muttered. Bishop blinked once. Ash stretched in his sleep and kicked Bishop's ribs. Bishop absorbed the insult with ancient dignity. For a while, the three of them endured the storm together. Then the sky broke open. The lightning struck close enough that the whole house flashed white. In the same breath, thunder crashed over the property, not rolling, but slamming down. Outside the workshop, the loose sheet of scrap metal Marcus had meant to move lifted from its hook and dropped hard onto the concrete pad. The sound was sharp, hollow, final. Metal against concrete. Not loud enough to harm the world. More than loud enough to open Marcus. His hand clamped around the arm of the chair. His eyes stayed open. He did not shout. He did not fall. He did not throw anything or run for cover. To anyone standing nearby, he might have looked suddenly thoughtful, as if some difficult memory had asked for his attention. Inside, his body had gone to war. The living room vanished without vanishing. The amber lights were still there. The radio still whispered about Mary Lou. Rain still struck the glass, but underneath it came mud, smoke, a vehicle door folded wrong, a radio channel full of breath, and no answer. He knew he was in Oregon. He knew the year. He knew the dogs were in the room. Knowing did not always reach the hands in time. His fingers locked on the chair. His breathing shortened. His sight narrowed to the edge of the coffee table, the grain of the wood, one dark knot like an eye. He tried to count, but the numbers slipped. He tried to move, but the old command in his nervous system had already been given. Hold. Do not move. Wait for the next sound. Bishop rose. The old dog did not run from the thunder. He stepped toward Marcus first, stiff and urgent, pressing his shoulder against Marcus's knee. The weight was warm, real, insistent. Marcus felt it. Somewhere far away. He felt it. But then another gust hit the house. The back door leading toward the enclosed porch shuddered. The weakened latch gave with a dry crack. Ash bolted. It happened in pieces, each one ordinary enough to seem survivable until they joined hands and became disaster. The puppy scrambled up from the blanket, eyes wide, the red shop rag still half under one paw. Bishop turned, barking once, a harsh warning. Ash ran toward the back, not thinking, not choosing, only fleeing the sound. The porch door swung inward, pushed by wind. Rain slapped the floorboards beyond it. Bishop lunged after him. Marcus watched from inside his locked body. Move. He could not. Ash slipped through the gap into the porch. Bishop followed, nails skidding on wet wood. The old dog's hind legs betrayed him on the slick boards. He went down hard on one hip, scrambled up, and barked again, hoarse and furious. Outside, near the side gate, a shadow moved. Not a storm shadow. A man. He had not broken down the door. He had not come roaring up the drive with the lights blazing. He had waited where the weak hinge gave toward the side yard, where the fence sagged slightly and the storm covered small sounds. He wore a dark rain jacket with the hood low, and he carried something that gave off a smell Ash knew, food, warm and rich, wrong in the rain. Then came the whistle, 2 high notes, 1 low. Ash stopped. Bishop's bark changed. The sound was terrible, not because it was loud, but because it carried recognition. Bishop tried to surge forward. His injured hip faltered. He slammed into the porch rail, claws scraping, body fighting age with every ounce of old honor left in him. Marcus's chest locked. The shadow crouched near the side gate. Ash, frightened and confused, took 3 small steps toward the smell and the familiar sound. The gate opened just enough. A dark vehicle waited beyond the fence with its lights off, engine low beneath the storm. Bishop lunged again and reached the man's sleeve. There was no fight, not truly. Only a flash of movement, the slip of wet fabric, a muffled curse lost under thunder. Bishop came away with a strip of cloth in his teeth as the man swept Ash up and vanished through the gate. The vehicle rolled backward without headlights. Then it was gone. The absence came before Marcus could move. That was the cruelest part. Not the sound, not the storm, not even the shadow. It was the silence after, where Ash had been. Marcus came back all at once. Air hit his lungs like water. He lurched from the chair, knocking the coffee mug to the floor. It broke against the boards, but he barely heard it. He crossed the room, slipped once on rainwater in the porch, caught the frame, and stumbled outside. "Ash!" The yard answered with rain. Bishop stood near the side gate, trembling so hard his shoulders shook. One back leg hovered slightly off the ground. His silver muzzle held the strip of dark fabric. His eyes were fixed on the road. "Ash!" Marcus ran to the fence, but the driveway was empty. No headlights, no red taillights, only tire marks cutting through the mud beyond the gate and water filling them even as he looked. On the porch step lay Ash's collar, the little green collar Marcus had bought because the shelter one was too worn. The metal tag had twisted on its ring. Ash caught the porch light for half a second and went dark again under rain. Marcus bent to pick it up. His hand did not obey at first. It hovered above the collar like the object was alive and might accuse him if touched. Then he took it. The collar was warm from the puppy's neck and wet from the storm. That small warmth did what thunder had not. It broke him open in a quieter place. He sank to one knee in the mud, not because he wanted to, because the weight inside him had found the joint. "I was here," he whispered. Bishop limped toward him and dropped the strip of fabric at his feet. Marcus looked at it. Dark cloth, rain-soaked, a faint, sharp smell rising through the wet, pine oil, disinfectant, dog food, and something else beneath it, something Bishop knew. The old shepherd pushed his muzzle against Marcus's hand. Not comfort, a command. Marcus closed his fingers around the collar. For one breath, the yard in Oregon and the road from years ago lay over each other. 2 places. 1 failure. Men he could not reach. A puppy he had not reached. The terrible arithmetic of seconds. Then Bishop barked once, low and rough. Marcus looked at him. The dog was hurt, shaking, old, but he was still standing at the gate, facing the road where Ash had vanished. Marcus got up. He called Pike first. Not Roy, not Elena. Pike. It was the hardest call he had made in years. Deputy Warren Pike arrived within 20 minutes, his county vehicle cutting through the rain with amber hazard lights instead of siren. He stepped out wearing a dark rain jacket over his uniform, mustache wet, expression already set into the steady seriousness Marcus had come to respect. Elena arrived soon after in her little car, hair loose, hoodie soaked through at the shoulders. Celia came with a medical bag and a face that went very still when she saw Bishop's limp. Nadine came last, wrapped in a long coat, her camera tucked beneath it like something living. No one wasted time asking whether Marcus was sure. Pike took the scene in quickly. Broken latch, porch water, collar, fabric strip, side gate, tire marks. He did not touch anything at first. "Walk me through it," he said. Marcus's jaw worked once before sound came. "Storm hit. Metal fell outside the workshop. I froze." The sentence cost him. He said it anyway. Pike nodded, no judgment. "Then," Marcus told him, Every piece he could. Door, Ash running, Bishop slipping, shadow at the gate, food smell, whistle, vehicle, no lights. When Marcus finished, Elena had one hand over her mouth. "I should have pushed management harder," she said. "No," Pike said, sharper than Marcus expected. "We're not doing guilt accounting in the rain." Nadine nodded fiercely through tears. "Good. Useless currency." Celia crouched beside Bishop. The old dog allowed it, though his eyes stayed on the road. She ran her hands gently along his hip and rear leg, checked his paw pads, his spine, his breathing. "Pain," she said. "No obvious break. He overstrained the hip and may have bruised the joint. I want x-rays if he worsens, but right now he can move." Bishop ignored the medical opinion. He lowered his head to Ash's collar and inhaled. Then to the strip of fabric. His whole body changed. The trembling did not stop, but it shifted. It no longer looked like fear alone. It looked like a gate opening in an old fortress. His ears flattened, then lifted halfway. His eyes sharpened, cloudy but burning with recognition. Celia saw it. "Pine oil disinfectant," she said quietly. "Same note as the cases we logged." Elena looked at the fabric. "Roy's placements used that smell?" "Several dogs reacted to it," Celia said. "Not proof by itself." Pike pulled on gloves and bagged the strip. But not nothing. Nadine stepped into the rain near the tire marks and began taking the photographs. Her hands shook, but the camera stayed steady. She photographed the collar, the gate, the latch, the tracks, Bishop's paw marks in the mud, the place where Ash had stopped. Marcus watched her kneel in the mud like a priestess recording a battlefield without raising her voice. "I'm sorry, sweetheart," she whispered, not to Marcus, not to anyone living in human language, but to the absence where Ash had been. Then she took another picture. "We will not let the rain erase you." Marcus turned toward his truck. Pike stepped in front of him. "No." Marcus's eyes lifted. Pike did not move. "I know that look." "You don't know anything about this look." "I know enough." Pike's voice stayed low. "You get in that truck angry. We lose time, evidence, and maybe Ash. We need traffic cameras. We need the partial plate from the clinic. We need tire comparison. We need animal control involved because this connects to the transfer file. We need to know which properties tie back to High Desert Second Chance." "He's out there now." "I know." "He's scared." "I know that too." Marcus felt the collar in his fist, the little tag pressing into his palm. Pike's voice hardened. "And if this is organized, Roy wants you moving alone. Don't hand him that." The rain beat against Marcus's jacket. Every instinct in him demanded motion. The old war inside him offered simple instructions. Pursue, close distance, remove threat. Clean verbs, familiar verbs. Bishop limped between the two men. He did not bark. He did not bare his teeth. He stood there, one old body blocking Marcus from the road, just as he had once blocked a doorway, a handler, a wrong command. Marcus looked down at him. The dog's silver muzzle lifted. "Do not bite, because the world dares you." Marcus closed his eyes for half a second. When he opened them, the yard was only the yard. Pike was only Pike. Rain was only rain. Ash was gone, but not beyond reach. "Tell me what to do," Marcus said. Pike studied him, then nodded once. "Get in my car. Bring Bishop. We'll start with the road camera by Harper's Fuel and the county animal control dispatcher. Elena, call your shelter and lock down every file connected to Roy. Celia, send me the medical pattern summary. Nadine—" "I know," Nadine said, lifting the camera. "Photographs and timestamps." Pike almost smiled. "Yes, ma'am." Marcus went back inside for Bishop's leash and medication. For 1 second, he stood in the living room. Ash's red rag lay half under the couch. The small food bowl sat where he had left it. The house, which had learned 3 breaths, had been forced back to 2. No, not back. Interrupted. Marcus picked up the rag and tucked it into his jacket pocket. Outside, Bishop waited beside Pike's vehicle. The old dog's body ached, but his gaze remained fixed beyond the road, toward a past that had returned wearing rain and a dark hood. Marcus climbed into the back seat with him. Pike started the engine. Rain ran down the window in long, crooked lines, like words written too quickly to be read. Marcus opened his palm. Ash's green collar lay there, small and wet, the tag dull under the patrol car's interior light. He rested his other hand on Bishop's head. The old shepherd placed his muzzle over Marcus's wrist. Marcus bent close, voice low enough for only the dog to hear. "This time," he said, "I'm not going alone." Bishop did not wag his tail. He did not need to. He only kept his muzzle there, heavy and warm, as Pike's car rolled away from the house and into the storm. The search did not become a legend. Bishop did not lower his silver muzzle to Ash's collar and lead them, unfailing and ghost-like, across miles of black road into the hidden heart of evil. Real life was less merciful than stories told beside fireplaces. Rain blurred scent. Tires crossed other tires. Fear left too many directions open. But the old dog gave them 3 things: the sharp pine oil disinfectant on Ash's wet collar, the torn strip of dark fabric from the sleeve of the man at the gate, and the sound that had turned Bishop's body into a trembling bridge between past and present. 2 high notes, 1 low. Deputy Warren Pike treated those things not as miracles, but as pieces. At Harper's Fuel, a tired clerk in a red vest let Pike review camera footage after seeing the county badge and the paper bag holding Ash's collar. The camera over Pump 3 had caught a black pickup passing at 8:47 p.m. Headlights off until it reached the far bend. The plate was smeared with mud, but 2 numbers matched the partial Marcus had remembered from the veterinary clinic. The rear window showed the faded sticker, High Desert Second Chance. Pike did not smile when the image froze on the screen. He only said, "There you are." From there, the pieces moved slowly and stubbornly into place. The tire marks at Marcus's side gate matched the tread pattern in a muddy pullout behind the gas station. One of the addresses Gail Mercer had added to the transfer list led to an old poultry farm outside the high desert edge east of Bend. County records showed it had been vacant for years, sold twice through shell owners, and most recently leased to a rural rehabilitation partner connected to High Desert Second Chance. Marcus heard the words through the steady drumming of rain on Pike's windshield. Rural rehabilitation partner. It sounded almost gentle, like a knife wrapped in a baby blanket. He sat in the back of Pike's vehicle with Bishop beside him. The old German shepherd's hip had stiffened badly, but he refused to lie down. Every time the car slowed, Bishop lifted his head. Every time Pike played the clipped gas station footage again, Bishop's ears shifted toward the muted shape of the truck, as though recognition did not need sound. Ash's green collar lay in Marcus's palm. He had wiped away the mud, but the little metal tag still looked dull under the car's interior light. Ash? 4 letters, too small to carry so much weight. Pike spoke into the radio, then ended the call and looked at Marcus in the rearview mirror. County Animal Control is en route. 2 units. They're contacting a supervisor for emergency support. How long? Close enough. That's not a time. It's the only honest answer. Marcus looked out the window. The storm had eased into a hard mist, but the roads still shone black. The landscape beyond Bend opened into cold high desert, where pine gave way to juniper, sagebrush, and low hills that looked like sleeping animals under a bruised sky. Pike's voice softened by a single degree. "I know you want to be there yesterday." Marcus closed his fingers around the collar. "Yesterday would have helped." "No? Pike kept his eyes on the road. "Yesterday you didn't have the footage, the property link, the transfer list, or animal control backing probable cause." Marcus hated that Pike was right. Bishop leaned against his leg, heavy and warm despite the tremor still moving under the old dog's coat. Marcus lowered one hand to Bishop's shoulder. One breath, two, three. Not a battlefield. Not that night. Not the radio silence. Oregon. Rain. Dog. Road. The farm appeared without drama. No gate with warnings. No floodlights sweeping the sky. No villain's fortress crouched beneath lightning. Just a long gravel drive half swallowed by weeds, a leaning mailbox with no name, and a line of junipers bending in the wind like old women whispering bad news. The place had once been a poultry farm. That much was clear from the low rows of narrow buildings, the collapsed fencing, the rusted feed bins, and the faded outline of a rooster painted on a sign near the entrance. But there were no birds now, no cluck, no wingbeat, no morning fuss preserved in memory, no pump thumping water into troughs, no fresh hay, no living farm smell, only wet dust, sour feed, old metal, and something under it that made Bishop's lips tighten. Pike stopped the car behind a stand of juniper before the buildings came fully into view. "Stay here," he said. Marcus looked at him. "I mean it." "I heard you." "I said stay, not here." The animal control vehicles arrived without sirens. 2 white trucks with county seals, tires crunching slow on gravel. A woman stepped out of the first, tall and square-shouldered, wearing a dark rain jacket, rubber boots, and a headlamp pushed up over a knit cap. Her name patch read Hollis. She moved with the practiced efficiency of someone who had walked into too many bad barns and still bothered to close gates gently behind her. Beside her came a younger officer with a clipboard sealed in a plastic cover and a catchpole he carried low, not like a weapon, but like a tool he hoped not to need. Hollis spoke with Pike near the hood of the car. Marcus could hear only pieces. "Emergency welfare check. Stolen animal report. Possible transfers tonight. Multiple dogs on site. Documentation ties." Bishop stood in the footwell, body rigid. He did not bark. He did not scratch at the door. He stared through the rain-streaked glass toward the farthest building, a low tin structure sagging at one corner beneath a torn tarp. His nose pointed straight at it. Marcus felt the change in him. It was not frenzy. That would have been easier. Frenzy burns hot and then fades. This was recognition, cold and ancient, like a gate opening beneath a hill where something buried had kept its name. Pike returned to the car and opened the rear door just enough to speak. "Bishop reacting?" Marcus nodded. "Last building." Pike looked toward it. "That matches the heat signature Hollis picked up through the side vent." "You didn't say they had that." "You didn't ask." Marcus gave him a look. Pike's mustache twitched. "Stay here." The officers moved in. Marcus had endured waiting before, waiting in briefing rooms, waiting in aircraft, waiting behind a wall while orders crawled through channels. But this waiting was different because the thing he needed to reach was small, frightened, and had slept with its chin on Bishop's paw only hours earlier. He stood behind the junipers with Bishop's leash wrapped once around his hand. Pike had allowed him out of the car only after making him repeat the instruction. Behind the trees, no advance, no independent action, leash secured. Marcus had obeyed because Bishop needed to be near enough to help identify scent if called, and because disobeying would turn him from useful to dangerous. That knowledge stung. It also held. The rain softened. Mist drifted between the buildings. In the distance, a loose piece of tarp flapped against tin with a wet slap. Marcus's shoulders tightened, but he did not leave the present. His hand rested on Bishop's back. Beneath the old shepherd's coat, the ribs moved with effort. 1, 2, 3. Bishop breathed. Marcus followed. Somewhere ahead, a door creaked. A dog whimpered. Marcus's hand closed around the leash. Bishop's body surged, but Marcus held him gently. Not yet. The old dog looked up at him, and in that look, Marcus saw accusation, trust, and the terrible patience of age. Bishop wanted to go. Every part of him that still belonged to youth wanted to break forward, but his hip shook, his breath came hard. His old body was a brave house with cracked beams. Marcus crouched beside him. "I know," he whispered, "but we get him back right." The words were for Bishop. They were also for the man he had been 20 minutes earlier, 20 years earlier, in every memory where moving fast seemed the only way to prove love. Hollis's voice carried from the building. "County Animal Control, stay where you are." Then more voices, controlled, urgent, no shouting for spectacle. Doors opened, boots scraped, metal clicked, dogs barked, not in one united roar, but in scattered cries, each one its own small storm. Pike lifted a hand from near the entrance and signaled Marcus forward only to the outer doorway. "Slow," he called. Marcus and Bishop crossed the wet yard. The smell hit first. Damp straw, long gone sour. Cheap kibble. Old disinfectant. Pine oil sharp enough to sting memory awake. Under it all, fear, not mystical, not visible, but present in the room the way cold is present before snow. Inside the tin building, portable kennel runs lined one wall. Tarps covered some of the side vents. Water bowls sat low, many nearly empty. A few dogs pressed themselves back when the officers entered. Others stood, silent and watchful. One old hound gave a broken little wag as if hope were a habit he had not yet managed to quit. There was no gore, no spectacle of cruelty. That made it worse in a quieter way. The harm here was logistical, organized, labeled, clipboards on nails, feed bags stacked by size, metal drag lines coiled on hooks, whistles hanging from a pegboard, a ledger open on a folding table with dates written in neat columns. A whiteboard in the corner listed transport windows and initials. Someone had made suffering tidy. Marcus stood very still. Hollis moved among the kennels with her younger officer, speaking softly to each dog before unlatching anything. Pike photographed the ledger. Celia, who had arrived with the second animal control truck, knelt beside a trembling brindle dog and murmured nonsense in the sacred language of veterinarians. Soft syllables, no sudden hands, no promises too large to keep. Then Bishop made a sound Marcus had never heard from him. Not a bark, not a growl. A deep, cracked note from the chest, low and wounded. At the far end of the building, behind a half-closed partition, something answered. A high, desperate yelp. Ash. Bishop pulled. Marcus almost let go. Every part of him wanted to. Instead, he tightened his grip and looked toward Hollis. "Puppy? Back section?" Hollis moved first. Pike followed. Marcus came behind, Bishop straining at his side, limping hard now, each step a refusal to be old. The back section held 3 smaller crates. In the middle one, Ash stood with both front paws against the wire, one ear up, one ear sideways, eyes bright with terror and sudden recognition. He made a sound so full of relief that Marcus felt it strike beneath his ribs. Bishop tried to push forward. Marcus held him back with both hands now, not away from Ash, but away from a mistake. "Wait, let them open it." The old dog trembled against him. Hollis checked the latch, then the crate tag. Her jaw tightened at what she read, but she said nothing that would poison the moment. She opened the door carefully. Ash did not walk out. He launched, straight into Bishop's chest. The old shepherd took the impact badly and beautifully. His back legs buckled for half a second. Marcus caught the leash and Bishop's harness together, steadying him. Ash buried himself under Bishop's neck, crying, paws scrabbling at the old dog's chest. Bishop curved around him, silver muzzle lowering, forelegs bending despite the pain. For a moment, the tin building, the officers, the ledger, the stink of pine oil, the names on the whiteboard, all of it fell back. There was only the shape from the photograph. The old dog holding the young one, but this time no kennel bars stood between them and the world. Celia wiped at one eye with the heel of her hand and pretended she was adjusting her headlamp. Hollis turned away to give orders too briskly. Even Pike looked at the floor for a second, as though the dust there had become very interesting. Marcus knelt and placed one hand on Ash's back, the other on Bishop's shoulder. Ash was shaking, but whole, thin mud on his paws, no obvious injury, fear in every inch of him, but breathing. Warm. Here. "You little thief," Marcus whispered, voice breaking just enough to betray him. "You still have my rag at home." Ash pressed harder into Bishop. From the rear of the building came another voice, smooth, irritated, not frightened. "This is unnecessary." Roy Delk stood in the doorway of a small office at the back, flanked by Pike and the younger animal control officer. He wore a clean, dark jacket, too clean for the building around him, and those thin brown leather gloves Marcus remembered from the porch. Rain dotted his shoulders, but not enough. Men like Roy rarely stood where weather could truly reach them. His face held the wounded patience of a man inconvenienced by lesser minds. "These dogs are part of a behavioral rehabilitation program," Roy said. "You people are frightening them." Hollis looked at the kennels. "They seemed frightened before we arrived." Roy's smile tightened. Difficult dogs require difficult methods. Marcus rose slowly. Pike saw the movement and shifted one step, not blocking him entirely, but becoming a line in the room. Roy looked at Marcus then, and something coldly satisfied passed behind his eyes. "Mr. Vale, I see you brought Bishop back where he started." Bishop's body stiffened. Ash disappeared under his chest again. Marcus felt the old clean verbs rise. Cross the room, close distance, end threat. They came as naturally as breath once had. Roy stood only a few yards away, wrapped in his polite little armor of charity words and clean gloves. Marcus could imagine the fear leaving Ash's body if Roy never came near another shelter. Another dog, another tired employee with too little funding and too much hope. Then Bishop leaned against Marcus's leg. The old dog was trembling, not from fear alone, from pain, exhaustion, memory, and the strain of holding back the world without becoming like it. Marcus looked down. Bishop did not bite. Bishop had never bitten when biting would have made him useful to the wrong men. Pike stepped fully between Marcus and Roy now, but his voice stayed calm. "Roy Delk, you're being detained while we sort through documentation connected to stolen animal reports, fraudulent transfer records, and welfare concerns on this property." Roy gave a small laugh. "That is a very dramatic sentence for a paperwork misunderstanding." Hollis lifted the ledger from the folding table. "Then you'll enjoy explaining the paperwork." The younger officer carried out a plastic bin containing whistles, transfer tags, and files labeled by initials. Celia had already photographed the bottles of pine oil disinfectant stacked under the counter. Pike pointed to the whiteboard and told someone to document every line before touching it. Roy's smile thinned further. "This is what happens," he said to Marcus, "when damaged men try to turn animals into absolution." Marcus did not answer, not because he had no words, because Bishop had taught him which commands did not deserve obedience. Pike turned Roy toward the door and secured his wrists. No drama, no cinematic thunder, just procedure, metal, rain, and a man whose kindness costume had finally torn at the seam. As Roy was led out, Ash lifted his head and watched him go. Bishop remained between them until the door closed. Only then did the old dog lower himself carefully to the floor, hips giving way with a tired sigh. Marcus knelt beside him. Ash crawled into the space between Marcus's muddy boots and Bishop's chest, still shaking but beginning, slowly, to breathe in rhythm with the old dog. Around them, the farm with no roosters filled with movement. Officers carried crates gently. Dogs were given water. Names were checked against forms. Photos were taken. The tidy machinery of harm was taken apart piece by people who did not look heroic and did not need to. Marcus placed one hand on Bishop and one on Ash. He thought of the men he had lost. He thought of every second that had become a courtroom in his head. He thought of all the years he had mistaken punishment for remembrance. He had not saved everything. No one ever did. But Ash was under his hand. Bishop was breathing against his knee. The dogs in the building were being called by names instead of numbers. And Roy Delk was walking into the rain without the power to smile his way through the door. Marcus bowed his head. Not in defeat, not even in victory, in recognition. Some battles ended when a man struck down his enemy. Others ended when he stood still long enough to let justice enter the room first. After Roy Delk was taken away, the farm did not become clean. That was the first truth Marcus carried home. Some stories made justice look like a door slammed shut. A villain taken into custody, a few brave words spoken, the wounded gathered into warm arms while the world put itself right before morning. But real places held on to what had happened inside them. The old poultry farm still smelled of sour feed and pine oil disinfectant. The tin building still stood crooked in the rain. The whiteboard still had initials written in black marker. The ledger still had dates. The dog still trembled when doors opened too quickly. Evil rarely had only one truck, one smile, one name. Deputy Warren Pike said as much before dawn, standing beneath the weak glow of a county floodlight while Animal Control loaded the last transport crate into a van. "This opens wider," Pike told Marcus. "Records, money trails, property links, the people who signed those transfers. Roy won't be the whole story." Marcus stood with Bishop's leash wrapped around his hand and Ash pressed between his boots. The puppy had not wanted to be carried after being freed. He had walked badly, too close to Bishop, stepping on the old dog's paws twice and nearly tripping over his own feet. Bishop had tolerated every offense like a wounded king, allowing a foolish heir to survive court. "Will it hold?" Marcus asked. Pike looked toward the office where bags of paperwork had been stacked and tagged. Enough to keep him busy answering questions for a long while. It was not the sweeping answer people wanted in stories. It was better. It was honest. By mid-morning, the rescued dogs had been divided between the county facility, Celia's clinic, and 2 emergency foster partners who had been checked twice before anyone handed them a leash. No one called them inventory. No one spoke of difficult cases, as if fear were a defect in the animal and not a debt owed by humans. Hollis, the animal control officer, stood by each crate with a clipboard, writing descriptions and temporary names when none existed. A gray hound became Willow. A scarred little terrier became Button because he had one black spot on his nose that made Nadine cry and laugh at the same time. 2 young shepherd mixes were named Rain and Porchlight. Marcus watched Nadine write the names in her notebook. Her hands were muddy, her coat damp, her eyes red, but her handwriting stayed steady. She did not make a ceremony of it. That was part of the ceremony. Ash fell asleep in the back of Marcus's truck before they left the farm. His head rested on Bishop's front leg, as if the world could not possibly shift beneath him while that silver old muzzle remained above him. Bishop did not sleep. He watched the road all the way back to Bend. 3 days later, the shelter office looked different, not cleaner. The same old folders crowded the same old shelves. The same heater clicked inside in the corner. A dog barked down the hall with the comic fury of a creature convinced breakfast had been delayed by conspiracy. But the air had changed. Gail Mercer stood near the desk with a folder held against her chest. She wore her navy shelter polo and gray fleece, her name tag clipped straight as ever, but she seemed smaller than before. Not weak, reduced to true size, perhaps. The jangling keys at her belt no longer sounded like authority. They sounded like weight. Marcus had brought Bishop and Ash for their follow-up shelter review, though Elena had already said the emergency foster would be extended while the formal adoption process caught up with reality. Bishop entered slowly, hips stiff from the storm and the night at the farm. Ash walked glued to his side, but his tail gave one uncertain wag when he saw Elena. Elena crouched and let the puppy come to her. She did not grab. She did not coo too loudly. She had learned, as Marcus had, that gentleness was not measured by enthusiasm. "Hey, Ash," she whispered. "Still stealing things?" Ash sniffed her sleeve, then attempted to put his mouth around her shoelace. "Good," Elena said. "Healthy criminal behavior." Bishop stood behind Ash, watching Gale. Gale did not step closer. That mattered. She set the folder on the desk with both hands. "These are copies," she said. Her voice was hoarse. "Every transfer connected to Roy that I could find. Donor calls, alternate contacts, notes I should have questioned, emails where he asked about specific dogs." Elena looked at the folder, but did not touch it yet. Gale's eyes moved to Bishop. The old German shepherd's gaze did not soften. It did not accuse either. It simply held. There was mercy in being looked at without being excused. "I'm sorry," Gale said. The words came out plain, with no decoration to hide in. Marcus expected Bishop to turn away. Instead, the old dog lowered his head a fraction and shifted his body, placing himself between Ash and the room as always. Not forgiveness, not condemnation, just the same old duty. Gale's eyes filled. "I thought I was helping." Nadine, seated near the heater with her camera strap around her neck, said gently, "That's why we write things down. Feelings are poor accountants." Elena let out a small breath that might have become a laugh on a better day. Gale gave the folder one last touch, as if laying down something heavy at an altar, then left without asking to pet Bishop. Marcus respected her most for that. Later that afternoon, Dr. Celia Morrow examined Bishop again. Her clinic had become crowded with the aftermath of the farm. Temporary crates lined the back room. Volunteers moved quietly. Someone had taped paper signs to kennel doors. "Go slow. Hand feed only. No metal bowls. Prefers women. Likes humming." Every note was a small bridge built toward trust. Bishop tolerated the exam with the weary patience of a creature who had recently saved the world and would prefer everyone stop touching his hips. Celia checked his range of motion, heart, gums, and breathing. She pressed gently along the back leg that had slipped on Marcus's porch. Bishop turned his head, not to snap, only to remind her that he was elderly, not furniture. "I know," Celia said. "Your complaints have been filed with management." Ash, sitting beside Marcus's boot, sneezed. Celia glanced down. "And your assistant is unqualified." Marcus nearly smiled. Celia removed her stethoscope and leaned against the counter. The humor left her face slowly, like sun going behind cloud. "He's older than we wanted him to be," she said. Marcus looked at Bishop. The old dog stood with silver muzzle lowered, one ear folded at the tip, eyes still alert, even in exhaustion. His coat had been brushed since the farm, but age clung to him in ways no brush could lift. "How old?" Marcus asked. 10, maybe 11, could be more. His hips are arthritic. The storm and the slip made things worse. His heart is working hard, though not failing today." Celia chose each word with care. "He can have good time, real time, but you need to plan for slower mornings. Medication, soft bedding, warm floors, no stairs if you can help it. Some days he'll want to guard the door, and his body won't agree." Marcus listened with the focus he once gave mission briefings. "What else?" "Patience." He looked at her. Celia's voice softened. Not the dramatic kind, the boring kind. The kind that gives medicine on schedule, cleans up accidents without turning it into a tragedy, waits 5 minutes for him to stand, and does not take decline as betrayal. Bishop leaned against Marcus's leg as though decline were an insulting rumor. Marcus placed one hand on his head. "I can do boring." "I suspected as much." Ash licked Bishop's chin. Bishop closed his eyes, long-suffering. For the next weeks, healing did not come like sunrise. It came like weather. Some mornings, Ash woke bright and ridiculous, carrying Marcus's red shop rag through the house, as if reporting for duty with a captured banner. Other mornings, the puppy stayed close to Bishop and startled when a truck passed too fast on the road. Bishop improved, then limped, then improved again. He accepted medication hidden in soft food with suspicion, as if Marcus were attempting espionage through chicken-flavored diplomacy. He disliked the warming pad for exactly 2 days, then claimed it with the absolute authority of an emperor inheriting a continent. Ash slowly began lying a few feet away from him. The first time it happened, Marcus was sitting at the kitchen table repairing a carburetor float with a towel under the parts. Bishop lay near the door, as always. Ash wandered in circles, holding the red rag, then settled under the table beside Marcus's boot instead of against Bishop's chest. Bishop lifted his head. Marcus looked up. Ash sighed, rolled partly onto his back, and fell asleep with one paw on Marcus's bootlace. Nothing moved for a long moment. Then Bishop lowered his head again. Marcus felt something inside him loosened by a single thread. It was not that Ash loved Bishop less. That would have hurt. It was that the little dog had begun to believe safety could stretch, that the circle around him could widen without breaking, that the world did not collapse the moment Bishop's body was not touching his. Marcus sat very still, as if any sudden movement might scare the miracle away. Outside, the wind pushed across the fields, but the house held. Marcus changed too, though not in ways that would have impressed a crowd. He replaced the weak back latch with a heavy one, then replaced the hinge. Then, because one repair made every other weakness feel rude, he fixed the sagging side gate and installed warm porch lights that turned the steps gold at dusk. He removed loose metal from outside the workshop. He added rubber pads beneath the feed bins so they would not scrape the concrete when moved. He taped fewer notes to the door because the routines were now lived rather than feared. Every month he drove to the shelter and repaired something without sending an invoice. A loose kennel latch, a rattling dryer, a leaking hose bib, a stubborn old generator that sounded, according to Elena, like a demon learning banjo. Marcus fixed it and wrote on the service tag, "Demon removed. Banjo pending." Elena laughed so hard she had to sit down. After that, she called sometimes for reasons that did not involve emergency. A senior beagle had found a home with a retired teacher. A 3-legged cattle dog had learned to climb onto a couch and refused to come down. Gail had started requiring verified follow-up for all outside transfers. Pike had called to say the investigation had widened to financial records and 2 more properties. Marcus did not always know what to say, but he answered. Nadine visited one Sunday carrying oatmeal cookies and a large print wrapped in brown paper. "I brought you something," she said from the porch. Marcus opened the door with Bishop beside him and Ash trying to squeeze through a space that did not exist. Nadine stepped in, inspected the repaired latch approvingly, and handed Marcus the package. Inside was the photograph. The first one. Bishop in the dark kennel. Ash tucked against his chest. Yellow light falling on concrete. The old dog's silver muzzle curved over the puppy as if guarding the last ember in a ruined temple. Marcus held it for a long time. "I thought maybe you wouldn't want it," Nadine said. He kept looking. Then he turned and studied the wall near the front door. "I do." He hung it there that afternoon, not in the bedroom, not hidden in a drawer, not treated like a wound. Near the door, where Bishop could pass beneath it. Where visitors, if he ever had them, would see that before there had been a rescue, before evidence, before Roy, before the farm, there had been one photograph taken by a tired woman who refused to let an old dog vanish quietly. Some photographs captured what happened. Others opened a road. The last night of the story came with soft rain, not a storm. No thunder marching over the hills, no warships of cloud. Just rain folding itself over Bend, touching the roof and windows with the gentleness of fingers checking that a sleeping child was warm. Marcus worked late in the shop, then shut off the lights one by one. The repaired generator sat quiet. The tools hung in order. No loose metal waited for the wind. He washed his hands at the kitchen sink until the oil smell faded beneath soap and cold water. In the living room, Ash had conquered the floor. He lay belly up in the exact space beside the bed where Marcus used to sleep during bad nights, paws twitching, one ear flattened under his own head. The red shop rag lay across his chest like a ridiculous medal. Bishop stood at the bedroom door. He had chosen the post himself, not the front door tonight, not the living room. The bedroom? His old body angled toward the hallway, silver muzzle lifted, eyes half-lidded but aware. A guardian without uniform, a sentry without command, a tired king holding the narrow bridge between darkness and the man he had decided belonged to him. Marcus stopped in the doorway. The bed waited. It had always waited. That was the problem. Beds asked trust from a body that had spent years mistrusting softness. A floor offered facts, hard surface, low profile, immediate orientation. A bed asked a man to rise above the ground and believe nothing would come for him in the dark. Marcus looked down. Ash had taken the floor. There was no solemnity in that. The puppy was upside down, mouth slightly open, making tiny dream sounds that suggested he was chasing something heroic and possibly edible. Marcus felt a laugh move through him without sound. "Strategic occupation," he murmured. Bishop opened one eye. Marcus looked at the old dog. "Don't judge. He learned it from you." Bishop closed the eye again, unconvinced. Marcus sat on the edge of the bed. The frame creaked. His body tightened. No thunder answered. No metal struck concrete. Only rain. He rested one hand on his chest and counted. 1, 2, 3, bedroom, house, Oregon, dogs. He lay down. At first, sleep stayed away. He expected that. Healing had never been a door kicked open. It was more like an old engine coaxed back to life. Choke adjusted, fuel line cleared, spark checked, patience applied, until something inside remembered how to turn. He listened. Ash's young breath from the floor, uneven and trusting. Bishop's older breath from the doorway, rougher, slower, but steady. Rain on the roof, the distant tick of the workshop cooling in the night. Then, far away, a small metallic sound came from the shop. A tool settling, a chain shifting, nothing dramatic, nothing even worth naming on an ordinary night. Marcus's eyes opened. The old alarm rose, but not all the way. His fingers pressed lightly against his chest. 1, 2, 3, workshop, house, dogs, Oregon. Bishop opened one eye from the doorway. The look he gave Marcus was tired, severe, and faintly offended, as if to say that if darkness intended to enter this house, it would first have to explain itself to an old German shepherd with poor hips and no patience for foolishness. Marcus breathed out. The sound in the workshop remained a sound in the workshop. It did not become a battlefield. It did not become a door torn open. It did not become the last unanswered call. At some point, without ceremony, Marcus slept. He slept through the rain. He slept through Ash rolling onto his side and kicking the wall once. He slept through Bishop rising painfully, turning in a slow circle at the threshold, and lowering himself back into his chosen post. Near dawn, pale light entered the room. It touched the photograph by the front door first, the old dog and the puppy, in the dark kennel, caught in the yellow glow of a night that had nearly ended one life and changed three. Then the light moved down the hallway. It found Bishop's silver muzzle. It found Ash's ridiculous ear. It found Marcus Vale asleep on the bed for the first full night in years. That did not mean the war inside him was gone. There would be other nights, other sounds, other moments when the past put its hand on his shoulder and called him by a name he no longer wanted to answer. Healing did not erase the dead. It did not turn pain into a lesson and file it neatly away. But the house no longer had one breath. It had three. And at the door, Bishop, the dog once condemned because he would not bite on command, kept watch over the dawn like a small silver god, guarding the part of Marcus that war had not managed to take. Sometimes healing does not arrive as a thunderous miracle. Sometimes it comes as an old dog at the doorway, a frightened pup learning to sleep again, and a wounded man choosing not to become a weapon, even when anger gives him every excuse. Marcus did not save Bishop and Ash by being fearless. He saved them by staying present, asking for help, and choosing mercy over revenge. And perhaps that is one of God's quiet graces in our daily lives. He often sends healing through small, faithful things. A hand held steady, a door kept open, a creature who reminds us we are still needed. If this story touched your heart, share your thoughts in the comments. Tell us who in your life has been a quiet guardian in a difficult season. And if you want more stories of courage, loyalty, and hope, please subscribe to the channel. May peace guard your home tonight, and may grace find you exactly where you are.